All
Hey
right.
everyone, welcome to Coffee and Benchmarks, Espresso and Benchmark. What is the name?
Yeah, I think it's special and benchmarks edition number one. So this is first one we do, combining, I would say, two things I really like, which is experiments and coffee. I love experiments from my early days
Yes.
as a scientist back in the day, and always love coffee. So I'm talking with Adi as well. We have these shots all the time, so we thought, hey, maybe we should just record some of it and see if it's useful for others. So, Adi, you want to say anything?
No, just let's get right into it. Let me start by asking you, diving into those data points that we're seeing here on your screen. Basically, at metadata, what you actually no. Let's rewind. Let me get started. First question I wanted to ask is explain what is it that we're seeing on the screen and how did you come up with it?
Yeah. So one of the things I loved about Metadata as a customer was the fact you can run experiments and the fact you can report on the experiments. So and at one point, I remember when I was a customer, I actually went crazy with experiments. When I started off with experiments, I had results, and in some cases, I went with experiments like really crazy, and then I didn't get results. So I was like, there must be some combination there of experiment numbers and channel numbers that is optimal, right? Of course, it depends on your budget as well. So because I now here at the company I have access to all this data, I decided to run this analysis and see like is there really is there actually any improvements if you run more experiments and channels, or is it all the same, or is there no impact at all? So what we did here, this is very simple and it's all published on the website. Just look and see, well, is there any, here's a range of experiments and channels, and we tried them both, and we saw is there really an increase in ROI in the opportunity creation at least or not. So
Tell
that
me one thing that surprised you. Tell me one thing that surprised you about the results and one thing that you completely expected and felt vindicated that the data showed.
Yes, I'll start with the latter one. What I expected and it kind of indicated was that, yes, if you run some more experiments across multi-channels, you do get higher ROI. What surprised me was actually an extreme end, is that you can still get an ROI with a low number of experiments and one channel, so there still is a room there for that. And that if you go the other extreme and you do a lot of experiments and a lot of channels, it's kind of a diminishing return. You start to actually see a drop in the kind of things. Maybe it wasn't surprising, but I was a bit surprised, and probably have to dig into it some more because it could be related to the budget and all this stuff. But I have some hypotheses, but I have to look at the data some more to kind of see it. But that basically was my surprise, is that like you can see it here,
I
right?
see where you're going with this. You're basically asking, is it that the point of diminishing returns is actually a mathematical or a physical point that from that point you really cannot get better? Or what it actually represents is that at some point you meet an asymptote, if we're talking in math, that is a result of one or two parameters that you just need to revise.
Yeah,
So, for example, add more budgets, add more audiences.
yeah, exactly. That's right on. 'Cause in my experience as a customer in the past of Metadata, we once went crazy with experiments, but we left our budget the same. And of course, to test the experiment, because again, in Metadata, as you remind for everyone, experiment is one unit of audience. They are creative in the offer, right? So one time we went crazy with experiment, but we left the budget the same. And of course, what happened was our money was spread like way too thin, and also we had a lot of experiments that we could not run because of the budget, right? Like they had to wait. So it ended up being for us a complete disaster, right? So then I'm like, okay, there's a limit here, right? How long you can run experiments for and stuff like that. So it could be, as you say, it could be that this was happening in this case, That's my suspicion if I had to guess. What I would love to see is what will happen if you uncap your budget. Would that kind of all of a sudden see an increase? I would guess you probably would, but there could also be a case where maybe for some companies this is the peak you can do with return, right? And on your could be based on your budget, on your product, your ACVs, your sales cycle length. Also, that could be that this is the best you're going to get out of ad, especially with the channels that we have. It might mean you have to go to maybe other channels to see that, right? So we have 4 channels here we're testing: it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Google. But it could mean that if this is working, there's no reason why if this works here in these channels, it wouldn't work if you expand them into other channels too. I would guess that probably another channel added there might give us some more return if the budget increase. So yeah, it's not proven, but we'll need some more digging up into the data.
Now, I was surprised that the minimal number of experiments was at least 100. That's kind of an interesting outcome out of here. That basically below the 100 experiments mark, you're not doing enough. Honestly, I thought it would be below, like maybe 50 would be enough. But I'm guessing that with all the changes that the channels have made in the past 6 to 8 months, in the ad groups, in their ability to, and their demand for you to have multiple ads in your kind of creative board, maybe that's the point where when they have more assets to test out with, more assets to boost your algo score with, and then drop ones that are not working for each channels, and then for you globally as metadata user across the channels.
It was interesting to me too, because like you can see here on the screen, like 0 to 100, you actually had the best return on the opportunities here at one channel. Kind of makes sense, because it probably means I really had to guess here this related to probably the budget spent, and with a small budget, probably makes sense to keep it like focused, and then as you spread out. But even at the 100 to 500, it's one channel. It's only when you go up to the high experiment numbers you start to see the multi-channel impact having an impact, right? Meaning if you're running high number of experiments, it looks like you do need to run across one channel. For example, if you just run this 500 number of channels, your returns are not actually great. But if you run them across channel, and it's the same thing with the high number. So it's like high number of experiments require you to really start to go into other channels. So maybe the idea here is that if you keep the same high experiment number, but you're only focusing on one channel, you're actually gonna hit the emission returns a lot faster. So if you have the budget and you want to expand, you definitely need to, at least from this data, it seems like it, perhaps you need to go to other channels.
That would be an interesting hypothesis to test out what would be the point in your budget. That means that now you don't need to just add more experiments, but to go to additional channels.
And that's exactly.
A budget calculation point. And I also think it has to do a lot. So let's be honest. When people say one channel, they mean LinkedIn, right?
Well, in our business, yes, it's LinkedIn. Yeah.
In our B2B enterprise,
you're talking about LinkedIn. Yes.
People say one channel, they mean LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I think that there's also an element here of the type of usage and profile of use of LinkedIn as a channel, as a platform. So if you think about yourself as a user of LinkedIn, it's a completely different pattern of use, and it's very limited to the time of day that you're on it and the type of persona you are. There are some personas that LinkedIn is not a part of their day. So I could totally see why after some point, and it could be some not a very high budget line, not a very large budget, um, that maybe after even something like 40 to 50K a month, you need to start mixing up the channels to more than just one. Maybe that point is even lower than that.
I agree. I mean, I agree. I think there definitely has to be a threshold in spend where you should start think really about adding another channel and stop eating the same old channel. And probably still too on the other end where like when you start to spend a lot more money, and let's say you have three channels, probably which we discussed earlier, it's the same thing where now you've hit that maximum and you now need to add other channels to maybe an increase in spend to see that return again happening. So there's definitely a sweet spot in the middle, but it is a good reminder for people. Like, I mean, I know people get like married to LinkedIn as a channel, but it's not the only channel. And if you have a way to target other people, like if you use us or some other tool, it doesn't matter. You should definitely experiment with other channels. But it does look like from this data, it's very strong actually. Like that, the 500 to 1,000 experiments, you do start to get like quite a lot more. And then even with 1,000 experiments, right, you're getting a lot more than you are with a smaller experiment number with one channel. You're getting almost twice or three times. So there is definitely there. I mean, again, this is a very simplistic view of the whole thing. So there's a lot that goes into this, but you just have to experiment and see like what works for you. I also think in general, besides all this data, I really think having more than one channel to target your buyers is always good.
Yeah,
Just in
yeah,
general, even if I have the data, you know, um, and you can adjust your spend. You can do one for brand one. You can do well, but having more than one channel. Uh, we here, I mean, here and my last company, we are typically advertising in 3 to 4 channels, at least two all the time, like Facebook and so forth, Facebook and LinkedIn. But Instagram for us become also um, fairly successful. I think also I did for you. I think you
yeah.
do
So
at a lower scale, right? But
yeah, on
use big.
currently, I basically am now running only. I do have a limited budget. Obviously, I don't have.
Hmm.
To those of you that don't know, I run the PLG side of metadata, MetaMatch. So I'm working with a completely different budget of dollars. I have a completely different CPL that I can absorb, and it's probably 10 times less than Abdallah's, which means that my all of my spend currently is focused on two channels, Instagram and Facebook. And because in my case, the conversion on mobile is a completely sensible flow for the user, um, I'm getting 6 times the less the cost when you compare LinkedIn to Instagram, and 5x the volume on Instagram. So
Yeah.
for me, it's a no-brainer. But I completely get it why when you're selling enterprise B2B and the PC must be a more substantial part of your conversion and the decision maker type of persona that you need, LinkedIn becomes a more significant channel and basically your first channel. Obviously, like you're saying, it shouldn't be your only channel ever.
I honestly think a lot of people sometimes don't use other channels. Well, A could be for targeting, right? It's hard to target in Facebook. Also, I think sometimes it's hard to track this data, honestly. Like I come from an ops background. It's hard to track the data. The more you experiment, the more channels you include, if you don't have an easy way to do it, it's quite hard to build the pipeline and be able to track the impact of each channel and the pipeline where it is. So that probably sometimes people just get comfortable with one channel. They have everything already built for it or tracking for it, and that's what they do. I mean, that's reasons. Yeah. So
I respect it, but I will say this. This is a classic quantitative failure. What do I mean by that? When you come to a task and define the metrics and based on only what you can
Exactly. Yeah.
Measure, dictate your own marketing.
It's not good. Yeah.
It's a very risky way to approach your marketing. If you would approach your marketing like that, you would probably decide not to do most brand awareness
I
exercise.
agree. I agree. 100%. Yeah.
And I would strongly urge you not to decide not to do
Yeah.
brand awareness
Yeah.
exercise.
I think sometimes people get stuck on, I'll only do things that I know how to measure or I know how to do besides just doing things that make sense. And I agree with you. I would rather you do something. So this is not promotion from data. If you want this other channels, like go test them. Even if you can't track everything 100%, you will know by just looking at early results how it's working. And then if you get really deep into it and you have start spending like a lot more money, then you probably invest in the how and the what and be able to
Exactly.
get things in. But if you let it be a blocker for you from even starting to experiment, but also I say this, you need to work in the right environment, right? You need to have a manager or a CEO that understands that you're going to experiment and you might not be able to give them exactly a direct line for everything you do, how it impacts, because the people
That's good.
who are asking for that stuff are results, I think, in the blocking that you just mentioned, right? Where it leads the team members to say, well, I'm not going to do this because I can't report on it on the first day. I can't report on it, so I'm just not going to do it, right? So it's a problem, actually. I think it's a problem that's more common than we probably even think it is.
I think it's true, and I agree. It's more common than we even want to admit for every one of us in our daily life. However, you must not allow those external voices quell what you believe is just good marketing for your brand, for your product, for your company. Because at the end of the day, and this is like a classic adage, that you can go way back. I don't know how to even attribute this one. Success has, many parents, and failures are orphans. If you
Yeah,
succeed,
it's a good one. Yeah.
and for some reason one of the channels that you had a minimal bet on generate a really good brand impact, then suddenly everyone at the company wants to join in and say, I was also a part of this
Yes, yes.
experiment. I had,
love that.
I had a lot to do with the copy for this landing page, and I was, if it was even if we're talking about event marketing, right? Which event should I choose? Which event should I go to? Is it just the event that everyone knows its name and it's kind of correct to go to that event? Or maybe this is an offshoot event that maybe not everyone knows, but all of my targets are there. Maybe it will be very hard for me to count which one of my targets would there. But if it's a cheaper event or something that I believe I can generate a bigger impact, a greater impact at a lesser cost, try it out. It's
Absolutely. Yeah.
going like, if you're not a $1 billion company, going through the orderly line will for sure fail because everything else is comparable. And then whichever one has the best resources, the best budgets, the best everything wins, right? The only way to break it is working asymmetrically. If your giant $1 billion competitor is not on Instagram and they're not doing ads on Instagram, well, guess what? You can look like you're a $1 billion company on Instagram, just on Instagram.
That actually is. It's funny you mentioned that, guys. Remember, like when I was a customer before I was working in a cyber security company, and I remember the team at data, they analyzed for us how many of our competitors are on Facebook. And to my shock, only like one of them was. And our competitors were like huge companies, like the Proofpoint, the Mimecast. They were not at all on Facebook. So we literally was us and one other company that was not even spending that much. So we literally had green space just to go. And to me, that was like, I didn't need to look at any data points, honestly. I'm like, if we can be the only ones there, if I can target the same people there and
That's exactly the point.
yeah, I didn't care about
Knowing that being the only one there didn't require you any
to see,
data,
yeah,
any
ROIs and all the stuff first. I'm like, no, I want to be there. Like, this is a
common sense marketing.
yeah.
Common sense marketing.
Yeah. I'm still to this day shocked that this company, I'm literally like, in some cases of them, these companies were public, huge amount of budgets, and they had not spent a penny on these channels. And the funny part is, we started spending money on those channels and we got results. So it wasn't like, so which to me convinced me that they just didn't even attempt it in the first place. Because had they attempted, you would have gotten results. Like we got results and we're selling to the same ICP, right? The same customer, the same persona. So, but yeah, but again, it's big companies, big teams. You probably had the same talk we just had now, but how we measure this, and also, and they just decided, let's play it safe, right? I mean, in big companies, really big companies, you play it safe, you keep your job usually, I think. So, you know what I mean? You don't shake the boat.
That's exactly the point. Now is not the time for that approach.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a great approach for 2022, 2021, where VC money flooded the market. Now every single one of us needs to have exceptional results. Exceptional results will not be attained by going through the paved line. Let's go and build my landing page and go talk to the agency and run my LinkedIn lead gen campaign and do all of the classic. It's gotta be the trying multiple channels, going with quality messaging. And I love that there is a point of quality. It cannot be just, you cannot look like, with all due respect to the great and magnificent OpenAI, it cannot look like ChatGPT wrote your entire marketing strategy. It needs to feel human and cool and all of that, but then you gotta scale it up. Scale it up with experiments, scale it up with channels, and scale it up with measuring everything that you can measure in order to see, am I going in the right direction or not?
Love it. On that note, I think we'll end our first edition here. Again, all this data that we just mentioned, coffee, mine's almost done. You can't see it, but this American style coffee. I'll do a special next time since it's actually here. But all this data, anyways, all is on our website. We'll post about it too as well. There's a page on our website, Metadata Data Hub. We're going to be trying to talk about each of these, but this is the one we'll talk about today. So it's all there. Yeah, so read, and I'm sure we'll have a space for you guys like to leave comments and so forth. But this was fun, Adi, for the first edition. Thanks, everyone.
For having me. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.